Right. Sorry, I hope that now we're going to be uninterrupted. On page 7, we have this discussion about mincha, and the Mordechai, Shulchan Aruch, they all say, once you're mekavel Shabbat, you're done. It's Shabbos already, you can no longer daven the Friday mincha. We raised the question of, what does this actually mean when it says over here, I'll focus on this sentence in the Mordechai, what does that mean? Does that mean that it's Shabbos? You can't daven. It's Shabbos, it has kedushat Shabbat as the sanctity of Shabbos. It's not right on Shabbos to daven a chol dik davening. Right, that's one way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it is, it's Saturday. You can't daven a Friday davening. Right, one way of reading it is, it's the next day. If it's the next day, you can no longer daven yesterday's davening. You'll have to daven the next day's davening twice, and that's what he says over here. Right? Shabbat, right? And that's what says. They will say daven Ma'ariv twice because it's Shabbos. So again, because it's Shabbos or because it's Saturday, right? That's the way I present it. Right, because it's Shabbos, so you can no longer daven chol dik davening, or it's Saturday, you can't daven Friday's davening, right? Now, which one, Yaakov, which one would you say, if you read the Mordechai on its own, without my pilpul, which one sounds like the Mordechai saying?
I would say that it's Shabbos, not that it's Saturday.
Right, I agree, right? Because he's very focused on chol, kodesh, right? He doesn't need to say chol and kodesh. He can say sahu Shabbat, right? Why you focus this emphasis on kodesh and chol seems to indicate that it's a problem of davening the chol dik davening on Shabbos. The problem is, I think so. I don't remember if anyone alluded to this, but someone did say. It's just weird. It's just strange. It's not something that we're very familiar with. It's also difficult. The idea that you're only be'onis, you're supposed to daven the davening again. But apart from the honest issue, there's also, it's just a bit surprising. But the truth is, something else bothered me here, which is the Gemara in Brachot of Kaf Zayin says that you could daven Motzei Shabbos davening on Shabbos. Right, Rav used to daven. Right, you could daven Ma'ariv early. Usually, when you daven Ma'ariv early, we daven the Shabbos Ma'ariv on Friday. Right, now that makes sense pertaining to Tosefet Shabbat. But the Gemara in Brachot Kaf Zayin says also about Motzei Shabbat, that Shabbos afternoon after Plaga Mincha, you could daven Ma'ariv of Motzei Shabbat, which is a chol davening. So Tosfot say that really you could daven the chol davenings all of Shabbat. There's no problem with davening the Shmoneh Esrei on Shabbat, except it's just too long, because if you have to daven all Shmoneh Esrei and the 7 brachot we say on Shabbat, etc., and you have to get to your Seudat Shabbat at some point. So Tosfot say we don't do that; it's too much. We actually have a nafkamina l'maaseh, right? Anyone knows a fairly relevant nafkamina l'maaseh for those of us who don't have enough kavana during davening, like me.
You start.
Sorry? Oh, I got stuck?
Rafi started saying that.
Oh, and then he
nafkamina
got muted by mistake.
Since he started it, I'll say that if you started it.
We'll say B'Shem Amaro, because he's not managing to unmute, okay?
Sorry, I'm really struggling.
Yeah, okay.
But since he started it, I'll finish it, which is that the nafkamina. So if you started a bracha, you finish it.
Right. So if you get to the third bracha, you say Hayel Kadosh, Atachon Adam Dat, Enosh Bina. Oh wait, it's Shabbos, right? Don't say those words, obviously. You say, oh, right, it's Shabbos. Whoops. So you finish your bracha. You don't stop. You don't say, you finish. right? You don't stop in the middle of the bracha. Why? Because there's no problem with saying Choneh Hadat on Shabbos, which seems to go against this Mordechai who says that it's not shaykh to say, once you're Mekabel Shabbat, it's not shaykh to daven the mincha davening. So I looked up to see what we have about this, and levoshti, I discovered that we have a tshuvat b'mara bazak, which you will see right now. Tshuvat b'mara bazak over here, in front of us in Chelek Hey, Siman Lamed Aleph. I hope to add this, to incorporate this into the shiur because it's very important. בחיפה נהוג שזמן הדלקת נרות הוא 30 דקות לפני השקיעה. תפילת מנחה ברוב בתי הכנסת היא 20 דקות לאחר מכן. תפילת מנחה היא כ10 דקות. ממילא, לא יוצא לקבל שבת לפני השקיעה. To my understanding, we usually light candles 22 minutes before shkia. Those who light at the time that it says on the luach. We light most not Yerushalayim, right? Most Jewish communities that are not Yerushalayim, candle lighting, I'm pretty sure, is set 22 minutes before Shkia.
This is in Israel. You said Israel sets 22, excluding Jerusalem. I mean, the Chuslar is 18. So.
Right. Yeah. So
I also was used to
18 leaves.
18. Candlelight one.
And candle lighting in the U.S. is 18 minutes before, so that's the standard time. And Yerushalayim it's 40, and you're saying the rest of Israel is 22.
That's where maybe I'm confusing. Maybe I'm confusing with something else. But so Rabbi Yoel is telling us that it's 21 in Israel. Yerushalayim is 40. Haifa is 30. Okay, we have the stats on all around the world. 21. I thought it's 22.
PT.
What?
What is PT?
Petach Tikva in Yerushalayim is 40 minutes. Petach Tikva in Yerushalayim is 40 minutes. So I thought 22. That's what I had in my head, but he's saying 21. Okay, fair enough. Now, so I'm saying just I'll do the math in Efrat, right? In Efrat, I think
1 less minute.
I thought it's 22 minutes before, but I'll double check that, which means that we start, and then mincha is usually set for 10 minutes after that, being 12 minutes before shkia. Most people come late, so you start mincha 2 minutes late, and then you have 10 minutes to daven mincha, and hopefully you'll also have to Tosefet Shabbat after mincha. So what do? See, that's the question here. Mimele, lo yotze lekabel Shabbat lifnei hashkia. מצד שני, נקבל שבת לפני מנחה, איך נתפלל מנחה של חול. So right, based on the Mordechai, the Shema Torah Kehilchata, Shulchan Aruch, you can't daven mincha if you say, I have a simple solution, I'll mekabel Shabbat at candle lighting, right? It's a good idea, right? Yeah, except then how you daven mincha. So you could daven early mincha, right?
There's a lot of assumptions in that question that I think we haven't really discussed yet, which is what does it mean to do Tosefet Shabbat? Is it something that you need to say, or maybe the fact that you're not doing Malacha is good Tosefet Shabbat? Okay,
that's a fair question. We're going to deal with that later on. You're right. That is an assumption. It's not so clear, but here's the thing. Again, going back to the Mordechai, I mean, forget the answer. There will be an answer to that question, but what do you think the answer could be? I'll explain what I mean. The Mordechai says once you're mekabel Shabbat, you can no longer daven mincha. What does he mean? Now, I think what Yaakov is alluding to is the following possibility. You could do the mitzvah of Tosefet Shabbat by simply not doing melacha. By refraining from melacha, you're already doing the mitzvah of Tosefet Shabbat. The Mordechai is talking about someone who actively was mekabel Shabbat. Right? In other words, if I go, there's a difference. Let me elaborate. There's a difference between the person who comes to early Shabbos minyan and says Baruch Hu, says Boi Kala, or says Mizmor She'el Shabbat, or answers Baruch Hu, where he clearly was mekabel Shabbat, but he didn't have to mekabel Shabbat. And then he added time to Shabbat, he didn't have to add. Once he actively added time to Shabbat, he turned it into Shabbat. He no longer daven the Friday davening. This could be different from when I go to shul after candlelighting and I'm enacting Tosefet Shabbat by simply refraining from melacha. For example, we said that according to Tosfot, possibly according to Tosfot, the whole issue with Tosefet Shabbat is only not having the suffix that maybe it's already Shabbos, right? So if I do that, if I refrain from melacha from 20 minutes before Shkia, that's good, right? There's no problem in terms of making sure that I'm not breaking Shabbat, or possibly also the other svara we said of showing up early. Unless you say there's a contradiction in terms. You can't show up early, but then say, okay, but now I'm doing the Friday davening. Like, okay, so you're not ready for Shabbos, are you? Right? You're still in Friday, right? So I'm not sure, but I see how that is feasible, right? What Yaakov's saying. The assumption of the question, correct, is that he's reading the Mordechai as once you reach the Tosefet Shabbat point, you can no longer daven mincha. Once you reach the Tosefet Shabbat point, you can take Mekabel Shabbat. Mekabel Shabbat, you can't daven mincha. Okay, so you're stuck, right? Because your shul isn't going to start mincha on time because everyone comes late on mincha on Friday, right? It's Friday night, so you have a problem, right? So what do you do? So that's his question. It's one solution to say, okay, I daven my mincha. Tzibur is still saying their thing. I'll say amen. Right? There's no problem to answer. Their brachas are brachal v'tala. They mean it. So basically, only the chazan is the only Russia there who isn't mekabel Shabbat, who isn't doing the Tosefet Shabbat, right? Im ken, hayim aspik lomar ini mekabel mikdushat Shabbat. Kama zman minimum lifnei shkia shekabel Shabbat. Tov. So let's break this down. There's a lot to unpack here, right? So most of it I'm not going to unpack at length. I just want to focus on our point. The last question of what's the minimal amount of time before Shkia, before sunset, that you have to make a Shabbat? That we discussed already, right? Shulchan Aruch says any time at all, and other Rishonim said there should be a certain amount of time, few minutes, 80 minutes, right? All the Lemaise, it seemed that everyone's like, 2 minutes is also a thing, right? If you want to be more mehader b'mitzvot, it's better to add some more time, but 2 minutes is, definitely complying with Shulchan Aruch at least, right? Now, regarding the question of what do you need to do in order to mekabel Shabbat. By the way, how do you say mekabel Shabbat in English? I'm not sure how to accept the sanctity of Shabbat. Is that how you'd say it, Rafi? Okay, just point
Shabbat.
What?
Accept Shabbat. I don't know.
Accept Shabbos?
That's what we say.
Okay, yeah, fine. That's if that's.
You accept Shabbos?
No, I'm not, because sometimes I carry
Shabbos. Yeah.
Right. Okay, because sometimes I carry words over from Hebrew to English, or vice versa. So. So I want to make sure I'm not saying nonsense. So. Shabbat. So that we're gonna get to that later on in the shiur today. But first and foremost, regarding our context, right? We're asking about mincha. Do we go by the Mordechai, and how much do we go by the Mordechai based on Yaakov's question? So you see the answer. The next question is also, what about people who come late to mincha? Let's read that shortly. Let's read that briefly. מחוץ לבית הכנסת, למרות שתפילתם תימשך לאחר שקיעה. האם ימתינו למניין והמנחה תגלוש הרבה מעבר לשקיעה? או שיתפללו יחיד ויסיימו לפני שקיעה? Right? So this is very common, right? You've seen this. I mean, I'm sure in Corona times this doesn't happen anywhere because you're gathering 20 people in davening. So, right? But if you have a shul, you have 200 people, so chazaka that many of the people are going to come late and have another 2 more minyanim for mincha, right? Now, so the first minyan, the Yichidim will finish before, right? The shul's minyan might finish, a couple of minutes before Shkia. The next minyan, the Yichidim will finish their own davening a couple of minutes before Shkia, but then there'll be Chazar Dashatz will be into Shkia, and the and everyone else, and then the third minyan, which is fairly common, will finish well after Shkia. So what's the best thing to do? Should you join the third minyan, or should you just daven on your own, right? You come and they're in the middle of Shemona Esrei, you say, oh, wait, there are 5 people waiting already. Should I join them and daven after Shkia? במקרה שמגיעים לאחר השקיעה ובמניין הראשי מתחילים לחון רניים בכלל ניתן להתפלל אז מנחה, right? We mentioned the question of whether the tziburs accepting Shabbat makes it Shabbat for you as well, right? This is this was a very important question. The most famous place where this question is discussed is where how much or is the individual carried over by the community's Kabbalat Shabbat. So anyone know where in Shulchan Aruch Poskim is this most discussed? Less today, it was more relevant in Europe. I mean, I'm sure that Dr. Ellis can tell you that in the summer as a kid, no one had late Shabbat, right? No one. 0 people, right?
True until Chabad came.
Okay, beside there. All right. I'm saying, but they're right in...
No, part of the community, we say.
Okay, בסדר, no, but okay, בסדר, אני מקבל. But I'm saying definitely 100 years ago in North England, I'm sure 100 years ago in North England, no one was doing late Shabbat in the summer. Like 0 people.
Yeah.
The community was Mekabel Shabbat.
30 years ago, yeah.
What? So
yeah,
even 30 years ago.
25 years ago, yeah.
Yeah, I'm saying, but Kal V'chomer, when the poskim were, when the Shach was discussing it, there's no question that no one in France was doing it, right? Or wherever, right? Wherever in Hungary, I don't know, right? So where's the biggest nafkamina of that? Where's the Shach argue this out? Don't know. Whether the Kabbalat Shabbat carries everyone over into Saturday, on purpose I think Saturday. Because Shabbos people don't care about as much. So fine. So make sure to finish cooking before. Yeah, you got it.
I was going to say that this is the nafkamina maybe of the Chakira and the Mordechai. Stuff like B'dikot Frenida or somebody who forgot Sfirat HaOmer.
Right. So yes, the Sfirat HaOmer is a smaller one, and Nida is a very big machlok, a very big discussion. Siman Kuf Tzadivav in Yoredea. Discussion there about what do you do? The community Kibbel Shabbat, and the woman did the hefsek after the community Kibbel Shabbat. What do you do now? Did it work? Right? Beseder. Back to our business. All right, so that we know the answer. The answer is daven the Shabbos Shmoneh Esrei twice, but that's less interesting. I'll read the whole thing, but most of it, some of it we know, some of it we'll learn later on, and there are a few points that you'll find more interesting. Okay, we know that. Shulchan Aruch we saw, says that in the end 2 minutes is also a thing. Shulchan Aruch says in Shiur, במקרה שהציבור לא יסיימו 18 של מנחה לפני השקיעה, יש אומרים שלא יקבל על עצמו שבת. אם יש לו אפשרות לכך, אף יתפלל ביחידות לפני כן, כדי שיוכל לקבל גם תוספת שבת. Right? Why? Because it's better to daven ביחידות than to have to daven Ma'ariv twice, right? It's preferable to daven mincha on your own than to daven Ma'ariv twice with the tzibur. So according to the Mordechai, you'd have to daven Ma'ariv twice, right? So it's better to daven mincha ביחידות now. אולם יש על מי לסמוך גם למי שיקבל שבת בליבו, אף לפני תפילת מנחה יתפלל מנחה עם הציבור לאחר שקיבל על עצמו שבת. Who's that? So that's Shuteret Tzvi. Shuteret Tzvi mentions the Gemara I mentioned before in Brachot Kaf Zayin, says that you could add time, the sentence. Ein dinei zmanat tefila chofim berachach im dinei Shabbat. Right? ניתן להתפלל ערבית של מוצ"ש במוצאי שבת, בשבת מפלג המנחה. Right? The Gemara in Brachot Kaf Zayin mentioned before. Right? And then he alludes to what now. So he's against the Mordechai. He'll say against the Rishonim. He says no. The Mordechai is talking about when you answer Baruch Hu, you've already decided that it's Ma'ariv, that it's Saturday. And so he wants to posit that there's a difference between saying it's already Saturday. His distinction is as follows. You could say it's already Shabbos, right? I asked before. Let me read. This is a bit complex, so let's say it again. I asked in the Mordechai, are we talking about it's already Saturday, so it's no longer Friday, or is it already Shabbat, so you can't daven the choldik davening? So he says, Shabbat doesn't bother us daven the choldik davening, right? Because you could daven Motzei Shabbat davening on Shabbos. That's not a problem. So why can't you daven the Friday davening on Shabbat at the holy time? So he says, Nachinami, that's not a problem. The problem is, once you decide it's Saturday, that's the issue. And therefore he says like this, if you said, Shabbat, or even you say, Shabbat, or whatever it is, you turn it into what you mean is, you're saying, it's Friday, and I'm adding Kedushat Shabbat to Friday, because which is a mitzvah to do. But still Friday, so there's no problem to have mincha now. The problem is once you answer Baruch Hu, that's what the Mordechai is talking about. Once you answer Baruch Hu, then you've already made it Saturday, and then you can no longer make it Friday. And that's the point. So, and he shows there's a Pri Megadim that says that Bemet, if you're in a community in which they decide it's already Shabbos now, right? They all refrain from melacha. You have to refrain from melacha as well, but you could still have it mincha. And he says, you'd say, wait, but you can't do that. So this Pri Megadim seems to go exactly the way Yaakov said before, right? What Yaakov said before, which is just 1 second, which is that the obligation of Tosefet Shabbat is to refrain from melacha, not necessarily to say that it's Saturday. Yes, Glenn, sorry.
So is that consistent with the fact that if you took in Shabbos early and Friday, you could still count Sfirot to Omer for Thursday, without a bracha, if you basically hadn't counted as at that time? I mean, I know that's halacha, and so I'm just curious how that fits in.
It's a good question. It's a good question because the ta'ana, I have to untangle this a bit. The way that works, to my understanding, is that Sfirat HaOmer doesn't care about what day you decide it is. Sfirat HaOmer is an objective time, as opposed to mincha ma'ariv that do. Right? Now, the reason for that is that ma'ariv is something that starts, when we say that ma'ariv works, when we say that you can daven ma'ariv after plaga mincha, right? There are a few ways of looking at it, but one way of looking at it is ma'ariv, the tefillot are based on Beit HaMikdash's time, right? Beit HaMikdash, by Beit HaMikdash standards, plaga mincha begins the next day already, right? You close shop at plaga mincha and you start doing the night work at plaga mincha. So effectively, it's the next day as far as the Beit HaMikdash is concerned, but not for anything else. Now, tefillot are keneged korbanot, and therefore you could have in ma'ariv at the time that Beit HaMikdash closes shop and starts doing the night work, right? But that should have no effect on Sfirat HaOmer. That's why whenever we do early Shabbat or early ma'ariv, right? Early ma'ariv doesn't have to be on Shabbos. In fact, a couple of days ago, I was at a place where they were doing early ma'ariv. I ended up saying Ya'aleh V'yavo of Rosh Chodesh before Shkia, right? So just like you do on Shabbos, but Sfirat HaOmer, they always say Sfirat HaOmer, they count in an hour and a half, right? Wait another hour and a half, an hour or whatever, and say Sfirat HaOmer then. Why? Because Sfirat HaOmer doesn't follow the Beit HaMikdash's time, even though you might argue that Omer should follow Beit HaMikdash's time, but it doesn't, right? Sfirat HaOmer, we go by the objective days, by the regular halachic days, and tefillot follow the Beit HaMikdash's days. So if you decided that you're going to daven ma'ariv after plaga mincha, you can no longer daven Friday mincha because it's already the following day. You answered Baruch Hu, you can't daven the Friday tefillot anymore because Beit HaMikdash closed the Friday shop already, right? but that shouldn't have any bearing on Sfirat HaOmer, as you said, right? So does that make sense? I'm asking Glenn, who asked that question. Okay, good. So just interesting, right? That the change. I think the Eretz Tzvi is very compelling. Honestly, I'm not even sure who Eretz Tzvi is. Eretz Tzvi, not even sure who that is. But what he's saying is, right? I asked, what is the direction that Mordechai is taking? He says, Mordechai is clearly saying it's already Saturday tefillot. You can no longer daven Friday tefillot, right? It's not a matter of Kedushat Shabbat, because that there's no problem. Now, we pointed out that the Mordechai's language is very focused on Kodesh, right? It's Kodesh, you can no longer make it Chol, right? It's very clear. But the Mordechai can't be against the Gemara. And that's why, right? I'll jump from here to the second half of the answer. במקרה שהיחיד לא יספיק לגמור את תפילת 18 לפני השקיעה ויש לו אפשרות לחכות למניין שיתחיל לפני השקיעה, יחכה למניין. אבל אם מניין יתחיל רק לאחר השקיעה, עדיף שיתפלל ביחידות לפני השקיעה. So if you start after shkia, so forget it, right? And then you go into the 13 minutes, not 13 minutes, not going to go into all that, but they do say, yeah, wait for a minyan as long as you start before shkia, based on the Eretz Tzvi, once again, based on the same idea, right? Based on the same concept. Since we say that you could have Tosefet Shabbat and yet daven mincha, not lechatchila, but here's the question: should I daven mincha bichidut, ma'ariv twice, or mincha with a minyan that will continue past shkia? Right. Those are my three options. I have 8 minutes until shkia. There are 5 people outside here waiting for a minyan. So I have 3 options right now, right? I could say Tosefet Shabbat and whatever, I'm going to join the shul inside and start the Chunarana now. And I'll daven Ma'ariv twice, one option. Option 2 is wait for the minyan, but then daven mincha into shkia, past shkia. Or daven mincha by myself now and have a 2-minute Tosefet Shabbat. So they say it's better just have Tosefet Shabbat now, join the minyan that starts before shkia. The start after shkia is a different story. So if there's minyan if you see the minyan starting after shkia, so it's better daven mincha before shkia. But if they're starting mincha, before shkia, join them, even though you'll be daven mincha into shkia and Tosefet Shabbat. Yesham milismoch, as we said. Beseder. The main point I want to take from all this is dafka this slumdis and the Eretz Tzvi, right? We said, I'm just going to repeat this very briefly. We said according to the Mordechai's language sounds very much like the issue is once it's Kodesh, you can't daven the whole davening. But that can't be what he means because that's against the Gemara. Because Rav davened, right? Rav davened Motzei Shabbos davening on Shabbos. Now, obviously, he wasn't Mechalel Shabbat until after Tzedek Kochavim, obviously, right? How can you do that? As we said, he followed the Beit Linyan Tefillot. He followed Beit HaMikdash times. Right, and on Shabbat, of course, he followed the Shabbat times. Right, he waited till after Motzei Shabbat, till before he made Havdalah, before he started Mechalel Shabbat. Right, he didn't light his Havdalah candle until after Tzedek Kochavim, obviously, or a few minutes after that, even for Tosefet Shabbat. So it can't be. Bottom line is, it can't be that the issue is you can't daven Friday davening on Shabbos. Why not? Mitzad the Kedusha. The problem is once you posit that it's Shabbos as far as prayers are concerned, that it's Saturday as far as prayers are concerned, you can no longer daven the Friday prayer. The nafkamina would be between if you say Mizmor Shel Shabbat and Mekabel Shabbat now, I can still daven mincha, as opposed to once I say Baruch Hu, that's a different story because now I already posited that I'm in the Ma'ariv realm. So that's just a very important point about the mincha that I totally missed.
Wait, so according to that,